I think the story of the American F-22 Super Raptor proves that you can always strive to be a little bit better. You can always push yourself to be a little more lethal. And there's always room for the overachiever. Because the F-22 is currently getting a massive $11 billion overhaul over the next decade. The US Air Force announced these changes at the end of 2021, making it the most lethal thing to fly since the Jurassic period. And now we're just recently finally getting a glimpse of what changes the new and improved aircraft will have. In the words of Air Force Acquisition Chief Andrew Hunter, this is an effort to re-optimize for competition with China. And that's what I want to examine in this video, what upgrades it's getting and specifically why it needed them. But I also want to know why the US just gave me whiplash and went from considering retiring the F-22 to now prioritizing its upgrade. We'll also dive into the major debate happening in the Air Force right now about whether it's really a smart idea to invest human and material resources into the old Raptor, when that money could be going towards the new 6th generation fighter instead. But first I want to tell you about this video's sponsor, War Thunder, probably the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made. It's available to play for free on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. And even just with the mouse and keyboard, its simulator mode makes you feel like you're in control of a tank or fighter jet. You can take command of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helos, and ships of 10 major nations. From the armored cars of the 1920s to the tanks and jets on today's battlefields. War Thunder gameplay is incredibly immersive, with detailed and realistic graphics and authentic sound effects that place you right in the action. With a worldwide community of over 70 million players, War Thunder has epic peer-to-peer battles that are unmatched by any other game out there. And thanks to a ton of optimization on the level of detail and graphics quality, the gameplay runs smoothly, even on lower-end machines. So head over to sign up using the link in the description. And for new and returning players that haven't played in at least 6 months, you'll get a massive bonus pack that includes multiple premium vehicles and an exclusive vehicle decorator, Eagle of Valor, 7 days premium, and much more, just for a limited time only though. The F-22 Raptor was a quantum leap in combat capabilities, so how did the upgrades prepare the F-22 to operate well into the 2040s, and furthermore, how do they bolster the US position against present-day threats? The addition of new aviation systems are a major highlight, because according to the experts at theaviationist.com, in some cases, even modern 4th generation fighters like the F-15EX have avionics that are ahead of what's found in the Raptor. The F-22 was missing advanced technologies like your cutting-edge data links, helmet-mounted sights. The technological gap limits the F-22's teamwork, including communications with other US aircraft like the F-35. The F-22 struggled with sending and receiving greater amounts of data. So now we have a situation where the F-22's effectiveness in the Pacific theater is being challenged due to its known gas-thirsty engines, which reduce its range, which is lower than the F-15. According to theaviationist.com, the revamp will include 3 major changes, including stealthy external fuel tanks, the top-secret AIM-260 air-to-air missile, and 2 new, really mysterious pods. All the way back in 1998, the then US Air Force Deputy Chief of Staff for Air and Space Operations, Major General Bruce Carlson, said, quote, "We're not building the F-22 for the threats we face in 2000 or 2005, we're building it for the threats we will face in 2020. I know it's hard to believe it, but 2020 has already come and gone, and the truth is both Russia and China are now attempting to catch up with American air power. This means that after 20 years of undisputed rule of the skies, the F-22 has new challengers." A recent high-level strategic operational war game of a hypothetical China invasion of Taiwan showed there would likely be no quick victory for either side. Most notably, neither side achieved air superiority, and both sides took heavy losses. The job of establishing air superiority over the 60 million square miles, or about 30% of the Earth's surface in the Pacific, is difficult. To that point, the logistics of getting equipment and personnel to the fight is overwhelmingly the most important factor. And in that sense, China's proximity to Taiwan is a great advantage for them. And here lies one of the F-22's potential weaknesses that need to be addressed. Analysts have said that the extra gas is, quote, the most critical for an air war with China, making long flights over the open water a little more feasible for the otherwise short-range Raptors. Currently, the F-22's range is too short. Thus, in terms of strategy, besides adding new basing access in the Indo-Pacific region, it's a priority to increase the F-22's range. the Raptor's evolution to the Super Raptor. The first glimpse of the revamped Super Raptor aircraft was first captured near the Mojave Air and Space Port at the end of March 2024, and it shows two main changes. First, it looks like the 600-gallon fuel tanks of the F-22 have been replaced by two new fuel tanks, officially known as the low-drag tank and pylon. These tanks are designed to be more aerodynamically efficient and stealthier than the current 600-gallon fuel tanks. How? Well, they reduce drag thanks to the pylons, which feature advanced smart rack pneumatic technology, enabling precise control over ejection performance and ensuring a sleek low drag profile. I love having precise ejection control, that's my favorite. When it comes to stealth, the F-22 is said to be almost invisible. If you're an enemy and you're looking at it on your radar screen, it appears to be closer to a marble-sized object, so be on the lookout for a flying fast marble. Its infrared and acoustic signatures don't reveal its position thanks to its internal weapons bay that hide its payload from the enemy view until it's too late for them. Combine this with its advanced weapon systems that enable engagement of targets beyond visual range, and you've got a haunting fighter that is so stealthy it could sneak up on its own shadow. The stealthy new fuel tanks would increase persistence and range by up to 37% according to some open source numbers. That would mean a new combat radius of 825 nautical miles, fundamental to the Pacific Theater. The program calls for enough to fully equip 143 jets at 2 for each jet. The second change we can see in the picture is that the F-22 now shows 2 pods. These have also been spotted during a flight testing in February 2022 at the Air Force's Plant 42 facility in California. They'll likely house an infrared search and track sensor that's being developed for the F-22, probably similar to the F-35's electro-optical targeting systems. The IRST involves placing a front-facing infrared camera sensor, allowing to detect enemy aircraft and missiles via the infrared signature. This pod would eliminate the need for heavy and expensive modifications to the airframe. Take a look at that F-22 for a second. Notice how it has no IRST or infrared search and track system. It's often used to track enemy targets. There are 3 possible reasons for this lack of IRST, I think. One is that the F-22 is mainly an air-to-air fighter, and radar is best for picking up enemy in the air, while that IRST is good for tracking ground targets. Number 2 is it was difficult to create a stealthy version of the IRST pod in the past. And 3, it already has a very powerful radar that can detect enemies many times further away. So why might the IRST be the hottest fashion in the summer of 2024? It's making a comeback because next generation sensors have made the capability more effective than it was in the past, back when the F-22 was first designed. So the new infrared pod will have greater range and new stealth technology, and the new stealth technology makes its adoption viable finally. Budget documents also indicate that production of the IRST is to begin in early 2028, with deliveries the following year. The IRST is part of a sensor enhancement package for the F-22, which will likely include radar and other detection systems to preserve the first look, first shot, and kill capabilities. It's also possible one of these pods on the wing is an electronic warfare pod that the Super Raptor will receive. This would give it additional abilities to jam, deny, and deceive incoming missiles. 142 F-22 Raptors will get retrofits here, and this will be a part of that $11 billion decade-long modernization contract. The Air Force has said that these kits are varied and will address corrosion, reduce maintenance hours, increase safety, and provide urgent response requirements identified by the user. Fear not, the Air Force has a plan for how to decrease the number of Raptors operational while maintaining combat power. Feast your eyes on the highly classified AIM-260 Joint Advanced Tactical Missile, the weapon you choose when you hate someone so much you want to shoot them before you can see them, because this is rumored to hit targets beyond visual range. The weapons program was started in 2017, specifically in response to China's PL-15 long-range missile. China and the United States are basically locked in the highest stakes version of the anything you can do, I can do better game. Even though it's super top secret squirrel stuff here, we have some hints about its capabilities. Aviation expert Steve Trimble said that he saw charts of the Air Force range requirements that showed the test area for the new AIM-260 that were about twice the range of its predecessor. So rumor has it, this will give the F-22 a max firing range of between 200 and 400 kilometers, possibly further. Likely around 180 miles distance, Possibly more. Don't shoot me with one if I get that wrong though. The reason people are having to guesstimate widely here about the range is because the newest variant of the AIM-120 predecessor has a range estimated to be about 180-160 kilometers. So if you double that, it gives us a rough idea of what the AIM-260 will do for the F-22. But you know me, I like to use my hometown of Long Island as a unit of measurement, a point that we can all wrap our heads around for context. That means that if you're firing this missile in Queens, you can hit me if I'm all the way on the other end of the island in Montauk. In fact, you could hit me if I was 2 Long Islands away. Here's the best part though, it allegedly moves at Mach 5 speeds. So if you're traveling the length of Long Island, it's only going to take you about 2 minutes. It's able to do this thanks to revolutionary new propulsion technology, but here's the catch. Those numbers are going to vary widely depending on the altitude and the speed of the aircraft firing it. The higher up and the faster you're moving, the longer range it'll be. The air gets more thin the higher up you go, which means it's more difficult for a missile to course correct though. It means that it's more difficult to correct your lead. This is why you want the enemy to not even know you're firing at them. Russia also has a long-range air-to-air missile, the RM-37, which has been the main opponent of Ukrainian fighter jets. It's reported to not score a lot of hard kills, but it was frequently forcing Ukrainian pilots to ditch their missions after taking evasive action, because they had low fuel budgets. Simply having more range doesn't mean it's more better. I think that's the grammatically correct way of saying that. We also have to consider when the missile needs to burn its second phase. When it requires that, it means that it becomes easier to be spotted on enemy radar, which is when they can take evasive action. It's said to use inertial guidance, two-way data link, and active radar homing, so it should be more difficult to jam, which is another new requirement as the military shifts to near peer. Essentially, the air-to-air missile combines a multi-mode seeker with a long-burn rocket system. Ever since sword combat, we've just been growing further and further apart. War is getting lonelier and lonelier. From what I understand, the missile is not operational quite yet. It's still in its testing phase, and the Air Force Major Kevin Audery, who's the lead F-22 Raptor operational test pilot, said live fire testing for the AIM-260 started back in the summer of 2023, so they expect it to go hot sometime in 2024. The Air Force has come out and publicly stated this technology, the AIM-260, is their #1 air-delivered weapon priority for both the Air Force and the Navy, and out-prioritizes all weapon systems and modernization efforts on fielded aircraft. The new missile will be a major part of the Super Raptor's new capabilities. And if you want to debate all of that with me and a community of like-minded people, you can do it at our Discord channel, link in the description. Now put that in combination with the fact that it's also fast flying at more than twice the speed of sound, has super cruisability, which means that it can operate supersonically without loud afterburning, and can do all of this at 50,000 feet altitude. In the air-to-air configuration, it carries 6 AIM-120 AMRAAMs stowed on separate ejector launchers in the central bay below and behind the pilot, and 2 AIM-9 Sidewinders for engagements within visual range, 1 in each bay aft of the inlets. It also has the M61A2 rotary cannon with 480 rounds of ammo. In the air-to-ground configuration, it can carry 2 1,000-pound GBU 32 Joint Direct Attack munitions. Basically, the upgrade is meant to increase time in air and make it delay while it's there. To retire or not to retire? That is the question. Because the very reasons for the Raptor's upgrade have also been cited for its retirement, arguing that it's not worth spending more money and time to keep the Raptor alive. Less than a year ago, the Air Force was asking to retire up to 32 of the oldest Raptors. However, in a sudden turn of events a month ago, Air Force Acquisition Chief Andrew Hunter called the F-22 his highest priority. What changed? There are different theories, but in general, this debate is nothing new. In fact, the same thing happened when the F-22 replaced the F-15. I think this is a debate between those who want to focus on the future and those who are worried about the present. The ones who are focusing on the future want to retire the F-22 and free up funding for more advanced future tech, while the ones who are worried about the present believe that the immediate need for more combat power should be prioritized. And it remained in production for 15 years, reaching a peak rate of approximately 2 units per month. The program originally intended to have 750 units, but subsequent cuts, delays, and changes gradually reduced this number. The focus on the war on terror and against insurgencies during the 2000s, 2010s meant that the Raptor was sidelined since it wasn't going up against any next-generation jets piloted by the Taliban. Today, the US Air Force has about 186 of these fighters. The final one was completed in December 2011. However, 10 years later, and the Raptor's facing a very different world and very different threats, I think. This was essentially the debate that happened when the Raptor was first cancelled in 2009. Leadership thought that the aircraft wasn't relevant for the current fight at the time, but let's evaluate their arguments. The side that asked for the F-22 retirement is concerned that at least some of the oldest Raptors cannot compete, for example, with China's J-22. Lieutenant General Richard Moore, Deputy Chief of Staff for Plans and Programs for the Air Force, stated, quote, "The Raptors will never make it to the combat force. They lack advanced communication systems. They do not carry the most sophisticated weapons. They are devoid of the most updated electronic warfare capabilities." On April 2023, Lieutenant General Moore also said that bringing the 32 jets up to combat capability could cost around $3.5 billion, and it would take a decade to get started, which in his own words is, quote, "a trade to us that doesn't make any sense at all to upgrade aircraft a decade from now at great expense." This side of the debate wants to stop spending on the F-22 so that the money can go to the next generation air dominance program, which is not just an aircraft but a system of systems that seeks to develop a 6th generation manned fighter and planned fleet of drone wingmen. However, the greatest expense is not money but qualified people. This side of the discussion fears that Lockheed doesn't have the human resources to deal with saving the F-22. Lieutenant General Moore warned that, quote, "Lockheed is not fully staffed for engineers. It would be reasonable to expect they would have to pull some engineering talent off the F-35 to get this accomplished." And what does that represent? Something more valuable than money: time. Those who oppose the upgrade see the world's rate of advancement is getting higher and higher, and they're worried about the threats that they'll face in 2035 or 2060. By the time the F-22 modernization is finished, the aircraft could be nearing the end of its lifespan. Many fear that the then 4 decades old Raptor is just not going to be the right tool for the job. That's what Tobias Nigel meant when he wrote in the editorial of 2022 Air Force Almanac, quote, "An arbitrary and inadequate department of the Air Force budget, disconnected from the National Defense Strategy, makes too many compromises. This year, the Air Force offered to retire its oldest F-22 Raptors, the most capable fighters in the world, early rather than upgrade them. Not because they're not needed, but because there are too many other pressing demands to fund these upgrades," end quote. Nevertheless, the side who wants to keep the F-22 for as long as possible sees that the real pressing demand are current and not future threats. This side includes the US Congress. Congress oftentimes leans towards prioritizing the most immediate pressing threats. From this point of view, waiting for only 250 to 300 NGAD untested fighters could be a risky scenario. But this side argues that in the meantime, you need the Raptor to protect both the US and its allies. However, one of the most meaningful threats to the F-22 superiority may in fact be itself. The main challenge with the F-22 is not necessarily its acquisition cost, which isn't cheap to be fair, but rather its high operational expenses, maintenance requirements, low availability rates, and significant difficulties incorporating upgrades. The high operational expenses imply costly flight hours, simply because it requires an expensive support infrastructure. In numbers, this makes the F-22A cost at least an additional 20,000 C/FH or cost per flying hour, compared to other aircraft. I mean, just look at that price sheet for yourself. Some estimates even raise the value to 85,000 cost per flight hour for the Raptor, which is about twice that of the F-15. With those prices, the F-22 better be fueled by some fine scotch and maintained by a team of royal mechanics. The maintenance requirements are that expensive partly because it requires climate control systems, very specialized equipment, and access to very specific materials and technological tools, especially to maintain its stealth coating. So she's pretty high maintenance. According to Lockheed Martin, about 50% of maintenance performed on the F-22 is related to repairing the low observable stealth coating that are damaged when the aircraft is opened up for routine maintenance. Also, there are security clearance problems inherent in any secret program. The crew has to be cleared to work on the F-22 from air bases that are also cleared to host and service it. Security clearances can be tough because the US government will look into not just your browser history, but also they'll be checking on your significant others, lovers, friends, people near you, the guy you once met in 5th grade who now writes a conspiracy blog. I wouldn't be surprised if the program even had a secret Raptor handshake. But there's good reason for it. This is because the F-22 is a strategic asset. The low amount of existing aircraft also makes spare parts more difficult to source. Now it seems like the debate has reached a middle ground. The Air Force will maintain combat-capable F-22s while balancing resources between older models, NGAD, and the F-35 program. Air Force Chief of Staff General David Alvin has said, quote, "Our goal is to maintain those F-22 in their prime operational state, keep them in active service, and subsequently invest some resources in units that require significant upkeep." But what do you think of the Super Raptor? I want to know. Tell me on Twitter @CappyArmy. I'm your average infantryman, Chris Cappy, signing off this net time now. Another quick thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. The game is out now on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. And for new and returning players that haven't played in at least 6 months, head over to the link below to check it out and get that massive bonus pack.